Hi, I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Sophie, and we are here to help guide you to the why behind your wellness why.
Come join us on our journey. So, I feel like this podcast has been a long time coming. This is a really juicy topic we're going to talk about today.
Oh, yes, it is. We're going to talk about some stuff everyone hears about all over the internet.
We're going to hone in on some nutrition and fitness myths, specifically around fat loss. So, we're going to do probably two parts of this, talking today specifically about fat loss, some things that we hear frequently, we see on social media frequently.
Yes, that we get asked about probably all the time, right, Chelsea?
All the time. And it's great. We love that people are asking questions, but it's also really confusing to people out there because there's so much information on the internet. And I always say, no matter who I talk to, I always like to start off and give a disclaimer. I call it my it depends disclaimer of a lot of these topics are so controversial because it really depends on the individual. It really depends on their goals, their medical history, what's going on in more depth. But again, today we can clear some of those topics up because we are specifically talking about fat loss. So if you are looking to lose weight, change your body composition, or just feel better in your own skin, we're going to debunk some common myths that we hear. So let's dive into it. Sophie, take it away first. So we're going to hop back and forth. We're going to talk about one fitness myth and then talk about one nutrition myth, give you guys a little background as to the why behind it, our own experiences with it. So Sophie, take it away. What is one of the most common myths that you hear in relation to fitness that you want to talk about today?
So, the topic of I don't want to get bulky is something I hear come out of basically every female's mouth, like all the time, like every day. I kid you not. And lifting heavy weights like will make you bulky. If this were the case, I would be ginormous. I love to lift heavy because I was such a cardio bunny in my old life, running in college and post-college, etc., that I just love to lift heavy. And it's something I do multiple times a week. And I am not ginormous. One, it takes so much time and energy in and outside of the gym. Your diet has to literally be on point. Like, it's insane the amount of food you need to eat. You need to be in a caloric surplus. And just being a woman, and our genes play a factor, male or female, how you put on muscle mass and like all that stuff. And testosterone, as females, ours are a lot less than men, even though you can have like a range. Obviously, there's a range for every hormone and vitamin and mineral, et cetera, in our bodies, that we are always going to have less testosterone than men.
Yeah. So you're saying that if someone comes to you wanting to change their body composition, lose fat, lose weight, strength training is actually a really good way to do that?
It's a good way to get toned. Like, everyone wants to get toned, but you're like not going to get huge. Like, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and be huge.
So people, specifically females, should not fear strength training.
Not at all. It's going to help your bone density, your mental health, literally everything. But it's not going to make you bulky. I'm telling you, I would be like the Hulk by now. I'm like waiting for it to happen, like wake up tomorrow and be like huge, but it doesn't work like that.
I love it. Yeah, that was one I definitely heard, especially with working in a health club. So many people are fearful of including that in their workout regimen, but you're exactly right. It's our testosterone, it's your eating habits play a role. So of course, like, yes, an individual can gain weight if they're strength training, but it has so much more to do than just strength training. You have to be eating a lot, and there has to be other things within the scope of what's going on.
Oh yeah. And it like one time at the gym, this is a tangent. I was working out and there was a female trainer near me with, I'm guessing, a new female client. And the trainer was like, I could hear her like, you're not going to get bulky from lifting heavy, like blah, blah. And then she points at me. She goes, look at that girl. She looks heavy all the time. She's skinny. And I was just like, oh God. I was like, that's not what I want to hear either. Like, girl, tell me I'm fit. Like, but it's just too common of a topic.
Definitely. Okay, so now diving into nutrition a little bit. Two of these kind of go hand in hand, so I'll talk about them together. But in relation to fat loss specifically, something I hear very frequently and something all of you guys probably have heard or read or tried or know someone doing it is one of the two, either avoiding carbs. I feel like in today's age, that is probably the most popular thing. If you were to just even like Google, how do I lose weight? Something with carbohydrates and taking them out or reducing them a significant amount is probably going to pop up. Or full fat products leading to weight gain. So that was definitely a little bit more popular back in, like the 90s, and a lot of people feared fat, but fat is not going to make you fat. And let's talk a little bit about the why.
I have asked Chelsea this question before because I love fat.
Yeah. So let's talk about that one first. So fat is actually super, super, super important in our diet. Now, just like all other types of foods, not all fat are created equal. So, for example, there's unsaturated fats, which are really heart healthy fats. They can help improve our LDL or bad cholesterol. So those are going to be things like your avocados, your nuts, your seeds, more of your plant-based fats, things that are liquid at room temperature. And then you have your saturated and trans fats, which your saturated fats majority come from, I can't talk today, majority come from your animal-based products. So these are things like butter or fat and like more fatty types of meats. So those saturated fats are solid at room temperature, and those are the ones that we want to just be mindful of the amount we're eating of them. I'm definitely not sitting here saying to not eat those, but there is more research done on those in a large amount with increased risk of things like heart disease, higher cholesterol, so on and so forth. So not all fats are created equal. So that's definitely one thing I do want to put out there. But with that being said, we definitely shouldn't fear fats. Fat have so many good qualities. They help with our organ function. And one of the biggest things that I talk to individuals about is the absorption of micronutrients. So specifically with fat, we have fat soluble vitamins, vitamins A, vitamins D, E, and K that actually need fat for absorption. So it's very common for someone who is following a really, really low fat diet that they might not be absorbing some of these micronutrients, which again, just play a huge role in our overall health.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And then carbohydrates, again, I think that's the more popular one right now. And I think Sophie and I could probably do a full podcast of this just like within itself. But carbohydrates are our main source of energy. They are what help fuel our brain. And again, I feel like I could go on and on and on about all of the reasons I love carbohydrates, but when we're talking about specifically myths, let's talk about like why this was even created. Like, where did this myth come from? So in our specific culture, the problem is not carbohydrates. It tends to stem from how, as Americans, we're preparing our carbohydrates and the amount that we're eating and being served of them. So I love to use the example of potatoes. I get the question all the time, like, I've heard I shouldn't eat potatoes, or potatoes have too many carbs in them, or potatoes are bad for you. Potatoes have so many good nutrients in them. They have fiber, they have vitamins, they have minerals. Again, I feel like I could go on and on and on about the benefits of potatoes. But again, if you think about it in our American culture, how do we eat potatoes? We fry them, we load them up with, a bunch of extra additives, and we just eat a lot. So if you go to a restaurant and order fries, I mean, sometimes the serving is like as big or larger than the entree. So it's just huge. And again, to each their own. Some people maybe need to eat that whole
I
plate of
love.
fries, and we should not fear those types of foods. We can definitely have all types of foods and a healthy diet. But again, it's not necessarily the root of the source of carbohydrate, like potatoes. It's again how we're preparing them and the quantity that we're eating that could potentially, I'm going to put a little asterisk disclaimer, could potentially lead to weight gain.
Can we like discuss bananas for a second, please? Like,
Yeah.
oh, someone was like talking about cramping, and like I was like, oh, bananas have potassium or whatever. And they're like, well, one, I've gotten too much sugar, but I've gotten like too many carbs. And I'm just like, you don't even want to see my face.
Yeah,
I
that's
can't.
another big one. And again, I think we have to look at a couple of different things. So with bananas, if you were to look at the nutrition of it, so again, you look up the calories, the carbs, all of that type of stuff, you might find that yes, bananas do have maybe a little bit more carbs than another type of fruit, or a little bit more sugar, but we also have to go back to the basics of looking at the serving. If you think about it, bananas, again, in the American culture, if you go to the grocery store, tend to be fairly big, which again is not a bad thing all the time. But if you're comparing apples to apples, a cup of apples to apples,
I
no
know.
pun intended.
Good pun.
If you're comparing bananas to bananas, no, I'm just kidding. But like if you're comparing like the same thing, like a cup of berries might not equal one banana, because one banana, if you would actually cut it up or weigh it or whatever, like it might just be a bigger quantity.
Mhm.
So, like, of course, a larger quantity of something is going to have more of it. The other thing too is all types of carbs are digested in individuals differently. So, how your body responds to a certain carb or a certain sugar might be different to how my body responds because of my insulin levels and all of their hormones. And again, I could go on a whole rut with that I won't get into, but you guys kind of get the picture. So we want to, again, go back to those basics of portions, what we're pairing them with. So again, our body reacts to sugars differently if it has more fiber, or we're pairing it with a protein, or we're pairing it with a healthy fat. So again, it's the absorption of things we want to look at, not just the nutrition facts of that's on like the food label. Sorry, I went on a tangent with that one, but it's one that I get all the time.
I have another question with that. Like,
Yeah.
and I know everyone's macros should be different. I'm being a shooter here, but everyone's are different. But also, majority of people isn't, I mean, what, 40 to 60% carbs about? It's like almost half of your diet should be carbs. And people are like trying to run from them, but it's like you're supposed to eat them like a decent amount.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you're exactly right. I mean, again, depending on what you read and who you talk to and the research that you look at, those percentages can vary. But no, you're exactly right. And I think this is one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get from clients is if we do talk specific numbers, which not all my clients we do, just depending on what their goals are. But if I am talking with a client about how many grams or what their percentage of different macronutrients or micronutrients should be, one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get is like, I can eat that many carbs. Like the percentage of carbs you're giving me is higher than protein and fat. And going back to the first thing I said about carbs is carbs are our main source of energy.
Mhm.
So to function properly, we actually need majority of our diet coming from carbs.
Yeah, when I was working with Chelsea in the fall last year and she did my macros, I don't know that there was honestly one day where I hit my carb goal. It was like, and you would think and I was, again, being a runner, I was like, I like live off of carbs, but I couldn't even hit the goal.
Yeah. And you're a great example because you are so active, and obviously like you're not only active from a workout standpoint, but like your job is active too,
Mhm.
that you need more energy because you're on your feet, you're, not only lifting for you, but then also like with your clients and things like that. So yeah, the more active you are, the more energy you need, which means more carbohydrates.
And
So
I don't do caffeine, so I really need my carbs.
exactly. We need energy from like real food, not, which we'll get into caffeine at another point. But yeah, I want to ask a question because I also hear this from a nutrition standpoint and would love to hear from like the fitness side. Let's talk about our core. So, spring and summer are coming up. People are wanting to start feeling good and maybe like tighter clothing, bathing suits, all of that type of stuff. Tell us about abs. To number one, like tell us about six packs. Can people get
Oh
six
God.
packs? And my question is like, how do you, how, let's just talk about that region. I feel like I have so many questions with it.
All right, I'll see if I can answer them all. Um, so in college anatomy, my teacher was like, yo, we all have 8 packs. And we're all like, great. Like, why can't we see them all, you know? But abs are made in the kitchen, like at least to see, you know what I mean? Like, and this is a big thing. Just because you have a 6 pack does not mean you have a strong core. Like, I could not get more aggressive about this. Like, I don't have a 6 pack and I can deadlift like twice my body weight. And that's great. That's fine because maybe if I did have a visible 6 pack, I wouldn't be able to deadlift twice my body weight. It's tough. You really have to be pretty lean, especially as a female, to have quote unquote abs and be able to see your abs. To be so lean, women will tend to lose their periods, which then means you can't have kids. So just keep that in mind.
And
But
to a whole other like hormonal issue. Not so like there's some people who might not want to have
yes,
kids, but like even if you don't want to have kids, it's still important that you have a
you're out of
cycle
whack.
because yeah, there's a lot of other things that can go on. But yeah, sorry for the interruption.
Totally. No, no, no. That's a good interruption. You're totally right. Some women do genetically have more visible abs than others. Like, I have some girls that I went to high school and college with that like you could see their abs and like just naturally, but then their limbs might not have been as lean. Like, people with our hormones, again, being so different, and where our kind of like fat pockets are can be different for like everyone. They are different for everyone. Again, my favorite quote: if we all ate the same and worked out the same, we would still look different. And just with that, like some of the strongest men and women in the world, like these power lifters, usually you cannot see their 6 pack, but their core is so incredibly strong. It's like so cool. I love that. He got on that stuff. Like the Mountain Man. Actually, the Mountain Man, if you guys know who he is pretty lean now. He's the strongest man on earth. He has like the deadlift record. But like I actually don't know where he's deadlifting right now, but probably honestly not as high as he was when he wasn't as lean. But anyways, that's a tangent.
Oh, that's so important. And I'll give even because I know like you talked about I'll give my personal example.
Mhm.
I have been told, and thankfully it's getting better, but like different times I've worked with trainers one on one, my Pilates instructor at different points of my life, I've had like a really, really weak core, which, as you know, is like the foundation to everything else. And so, but it's funny because like even looking back, like I was one of those people, not anymore because of a whole lot of other reasons, but like in high school and beginning of college, like I was definitely one of those people that like you could like my leanest part of me was my core. I tend to hold my fat more in like my hips and my legs, and I'm definitely like that body type. But it's just so interesting because I'm a prime example of like what you were talking about of like right now, you can't see my a six pack in the mirror. I'm definitely not saying that by any means. But if I am to like lose weight or lose fat, it usually is in that area. And thankfully, I'm working on my core strength, but I definitely have a really weak core. And I've been told that. And it's led me to like back pain, mobility issues, all these types of things. So I will tell you from personal experience, I would much rather not be in pain and have a strong core than be in pain and not feel good and like quote unquote look better in the mirror. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. That's good info for everyone to hear. And I do want to say, like anatomically speaking, abs, like our ab muscles are just like the most surface level ones. And honestly, those matter like the least in the gym. You want like your transverse abdominis and your pelvic floor, those deeper core muscles, to be what are your strongest. That's going to help you deadlift a lot. It's going to help you birth children. It's going to help you pick up your children and like move better and all that stuff. Like our core is like our hips, torso, like even a couple of shoulder muscles. Like it's that whole, like our trunk is our core. Our abs are like those two surface level strips that go right down our stomachs.
Yeah, such interesting information and so good because again, I feel like these are the things a lot of people struggle with. And especially I think core and abs, again, like going into summer, especially for females, is an area that we compare ourselves to each other all the time. I actually recently had a conversation with a client about this, is like just again, like self comparison to one another and comparing what you look like in a swimsuit versus what you look like in a swimsuit. And so, as you always say, and just said a little bit ago, if we all ate the same and worked out the same, we still would all be different. So, just a good reminder on that part. And that leads really well into the next thing I was going to talk about from a nutrition standpoint was foods that burn fat, which again, I think kind of goes hand in hand with this like ab conversation of getting the question of like, well, I heard if I ate more of this or drank green tea, or like, are there any foods that really help me to burn fat? And Sophie, do you know the answer? Do you want to guess what the answer to that question is? Are there foods that help you burn fat?
I'm going to guess it starts with an N, ends with an O.
No. Correct. I love it. So yeah, so unfortunately, if there was a miracle food that helped people to be the weight and the body composition they want to be, a lot of people in the health industry would not have a job.
Well, it would also be out of stock.
True. Yeah, very true. Now, with that being said, there's definitely things that can help with our metabolism. And again, I definitely don't want to like say there's one particular food because again, everybody digests things differently, but I'll give one example. So protein, just the category of protein, not one specific food in protein, can help to speed up our metabolism, not overnight. It usually also is not by itself. So again, you can't just eat protein and expect to lose belly fat and gain muscle. It's in conjunction with having a good workout routine and eating other things that are balanced, eating enough, timing of eating, again, like hormone balance. There's so many other things that go hand in hand with it, but protein can help.
And how about muscle mass?
Like gaining muscle mass?
Having muscle mass would help someone burn some fat.
Oh, yeah. So I love giving this analogy, or it's not really an analogy, I guess, but the easiest way I like to explain it, and feel free to chime in, Sophie, if you explain it a different way or have different thoughts about it, since this is just an open conversation. But this kind of goes hand in hand with like why protein helps with metabolism, because muscle mass also can help with metabolism. Again, a lot of things help with your metabolism, genetics, again, where you are in life, your lifestyle, stress, sleep, all of that type of stuff. But when we're just talking about muscle mass, if you think about muscle versus fat in our body, muscle is an active tissue. And think about it, when something is active, it's burning through calories. So when we have increased muscle mass, we tend to burn through calories quicker. What does burning through calories quicker equal? A faster metabolism versus just body fat. Everybody, especially females, do need body fat on their bodies, and everybody needs a different amount of body fat. But excess body fat, more body fat than our body needs, it's not an active tissue. It just sits in our body. It doesn't really do anything. So if someone has more fat on their body, excess fat, again, we all need fat, but excess fat, it just kind of sits there. It's not really burning through calories. So there's definitely a trend. Again, taking genetics and all those other things out of the situation, that if we were just to look at muscle mass, there's a lot of really good research that does show that potentially having more muscle mass can potentially lead to having a faster metabolism, specifically because it is an active tissue.
No, that's really good. I explain that the same way. And then something I usually add or get asked about is like a pound of fat and a pound of muscle, like a pound of fat weighing more. And I'm like, well, a pound and a pound weigh the same, right? But one takes up less space and one is active and one is not active.
Mm-hmm.
The muscle takes up less space.
Yeah, it's the size of it. Yeah, you're exactly right. And they have those, like, I always think they're gross. They're just like weird looking, but those like models of like
Yeah.
5 pounds versus that versus 5 pounds of muscle. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're exactly right. And that's also why, again, like this is going into a whole nother topic, but why we don't want to just look at weight on the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you could have two people that weighed the exact same and were the exact same height, but they looked totally different because of their bone density, because of their muscle versus fat, so many different things. So
Totally.
yeah, you're exactly right. It's not that they weigh different, it's that the density and the space that they're taking up is different. So yeah.
Totally.
And that leads into the last thing that you're going to talk about from a fitness standpoint was spot reducing. I feel like all of these kind of go like hand in hand. So talk about that with like spot reducing.
You can't pick where you lose your fat. I get that all the time. Like, I just want like here and here. I'm like, well, it's gonna come from all over. Like I just want like this love handle gone, or like my back of my arm. And I'm like, yeah, me too, sister. It just doesn't work like that. Like, we're not on Instagram here, like being able to just Photoshop our, excess body parts that we don't want, or creating bigger ones that we do want. Um, it can't work like that.
I mean, yeah, I think that kind of goes back to the genetics piece of it too.
Because we're
Um,
gonna lose it differently.
Yep, we're gonna lose it differently. Even like males versus females, but even within that, like every female loses differently.
Mm-hmm.
Every female holds on to stuff differently. And yeah, so there's so many things again from like a nutrition and exercise standpoint that can help, but we can't just go in and say like we're just gonna like lose where we want to lose. So yeah.
100%.
And then the only last thing that I wanted to talk about from a nutrition standpoint before we wrap it up is just the topic in terms of fat loss with cleansing or detoxing, especially around like the new year, or again, now we're like leading into spring and summer. Sometimes people are just wanting like a kickstart to, again, like, I just want to kickstart to my metabolism, or I just want to kickstart
Monday.
to, yep, I just want to kickstart to my diet and feeling better. And cleansing and detoxing, again, I think depending on who you talk to and what you read, you're going to hear all different things. But from a professional standpoint, as a dietitian, if you're looking to like get a kickstart or rejuvenate your body, the real thing that you want to do is focus on eating more whole foods, drinking more water, making sure you're getting electrolytes in, and just being mindful of more of those processed foods. Again, not saying to take them out, just being more mindful of them. Again, a lot of us don't feel good in our bodies because of all of these additional things that we're getting in. And then even things that aren't nutrition related. Again, like someone might not feel good because they're not getting enough sleep and they're really, really stressed, that can have an impact on their nutrition. So our bodies cleanse and detox themselves. That's what like our kidneys and our liver and our digestive system. And again, if someone has a medical history of these things not working well, then they might have to be on a certain specific type of diet to help make sure their organs are still functioning the way they should be. But our body is already a natural detoxer and cleanser. Going on a detox or cleanse is not going to speed up that process by any means. I do get the question kind of frequently of like, well, I've done a detox before and I've felt so good. And I always ask the question back, well, do you think that you feel good because you did a cleanse, or do you think you feel good because you stopped drinking alcohol for a week and got enough sleep and took out more of those like refined and processed foods? And it's just a good food for thought to think through that. So again, I'm sure there's a million out there of these different myths and things. So now we want to hear from you guys. So Sophie, tell them what our food for thought or takeaway is.
So our takeaway is don't listen to everything you hear on the internet. And our food for thought is like, when you're hearing these things and seeing these things, like you need to go inward and outward and like ask a professional. Just because your one friend is doing like keto doesn't mean you have to do keto, and like everyone's different and we all want to look good and feel good. At the end of the day, everything in moderation, and you need to like live your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. And I think that's a really good wrap up. And again, that's what we're here for. So we by no means are trying to come out and say we're an expert in everything, because we're not, and nobody is an expert in everything. But again, like we both have knowledge. We're two really good resources from like a fitness standpoint and a nutrition standpoint. So reach out to us if you guys have questions. Send us a message on Instagram. Head to our websites and connect with us, because again, like there's so much out there on the internet that it's really easy to get caught up in these types of things. Know that you have resources behind you that we're happy to answer your questions, or if we don't know, refer you to someone or research it for you a little bit.
Yeah, it's sadly a little bit of like a money suck.
Yeah.
And like a beat up your mental health suck.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We wonder why. No, I'm not even going to get into that. I was going to say
our world is the way it is.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. You read my mind. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that's a lot of information for today. So we will wrap it up. Have a great day, everyone. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye.